So welcome everyone to the summer lighthouse drawing for this evening. My name is Anita Thompson and I teach art workshops for mostly libraries, all ages. It's so much fun and I'm just letting in someone else as I'm talking. Um, and I'm thrilled to be here with you this evening. Thank you for taking the time to make some art with me tonight. This will be recorded and I will send it to Lisa either by this evening or by tomorrow morning. And then she will get it to you when she is able. So look out for that. It also goes up on my YouTube channel. It's hidden for about a month, and then I release it to the public. That's so that the libraries have a chance to, have all of you see it first. Okay, so I have spotlighted my video. We just need a pencil first. After that, um, we have a very fine point pen. So I know that some of you have the art supplies from the library. I think there was a micron pen in there, but any pen will do that is very fine tipped. And by fine tip, I mean, oh, let me let somebody else in. Oops. And I'm just gonna mute somebody. Okay. By fine tip, it should be incredibly, it's very thin. So I'm just gonna kind of show this up close. Mine is a well, this one's actually 0.38 millimeters, but you can do a 0.4, 0.5. It actually doesn't matter in the long run, but if you were curious. Okay, so I'm just make sure nobody else is coming in and we're good. All right. So, Maria, I like your I like your little dog face there. That's adorable. So getting started, if anybody wants to take a picture of this, I'm going to hold it up a little closer. As I mentioned, so we're doing the full page. And we're going to be starting over on the left side of the paper here and starting about halfway down. So let's get started with that. Um, you also notice probably the color difference in my papers, which is pretty funny because it's the same sketch paper, but just from it's just a recent one. So it's very interesting. It's like it's yellowed. Maybe I got I don't know. I have no idea. It's very interesting though. Okay, so starting down on the left, we're going to go about halfway down. We want to make sure that we have enough room at the top for our lighthouse. I'm just going to go a little bit. So what we're going to do first is we're going to be drawing the shape of the cliffs. So, and you're going to go, you don't have to go very dark or I'm sorry, you don't have to go very light because we're actually going to be going over this in the pen. So we start off at the top of the cliff. So we're going to do the general shape of the cliff here. We also want to make sure, because this is in perspective, which I'll be doing more perspective drawings in the fall. We know that this is back here where the sea is, right? So the sea line. So we can kind of start off and create that sea line here. And then we start to go in and it's going to come closer to us. The line is going to come closer to us, which means it is, obviously this is further back. And we are just sort of drawing a general shape for now. We can go back and make sure that we have, all of it. So what I've done so far is we have this part here. I have to fix it and make it a little more rocky, but I'm trying to just get the general shape here. So we're right here. Okay, so we're going to go in, and I'll give everybody a chance to catch up. Okay, and then so our rocky cliff here. Like I said, it's kind of inching toward the bottom left of our paper here. Okay, so we're here, and then we have this final rock formation. It's about right here. And I'm going to let everybody catch up. I'm also going to move my camera a bit closer now. Now, we were talking a little bit when I first opened the Zoom, and we were talking about how it's so much cooler this evening, and cool, the weather's been cooler, and it sort of reminds us of like a Cape Cod sort of beach, which is what this is based off of. Actually, I sort of made up the lighthouse and the house, but I was thinking about many years ago when I was in oh my goodness, Nantucket. And I was never really a beach person until I went to Nantucket. It's really pretty. Okay, so we now have the start of the shape of it. We can now start to go in, and we just want to make some, some other details here. So for instance, right here, we're going to make this part jut out a little bit into the water, right? And it's going to go up because the house is going to be along that top area. And then I'm going to kind of make this a little more rocky. So now that we have, the separate basic shape of everything, we can now go in and, create some of the finer details. So we have sort of a dip here, starts to go out a little bit, and then more of a shape like that. And we also want to pay attention to in the water as well, right? So we want this to be a little bit jagged. Okay. So we'll come back to that, but we're going to now create the house and our lighthouse as well. And so we have the shape of the house a little further in on the left. So we want to make sure to have room along this part to put the lighthouse so that it's not toppling, it doesn't look like it's toppling over the edge. So you're probably going to go over further left than you think. And so again, because we are dealing with perspective, we're going to draw this side of the house first. Oh, let's get Renee in there. Hi, Renee. Welcome.
Hi, thank
Hi,
you.
you're welcome.
Look.
I'm going to put the information in the chat for you. So we've just started to sort of draw it out. We are, um, feel free. We started off with the cliff and then the water line. And we are now heading into the house. And so we draw the side of the house first. And then we're going to make the line for the roof slanted a little bit, or I should say that starting the roof, right? So that line is not straight, it's slanted because it goes back because of perspective. And then basically, this is going to sort of mimic the same thing. And then we drop down for the roof and then straight for the actual building part. And that's the basic shape of it. I'm going to make mine just a little bit longer. I realized that I have 3 windows. And even though they're further away,
She entertains herself.
I do entertain myself, Michael. And sometimes I answer myself back, and I'm not sure. Probably not a good thing either. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make that roof look a little more 3-dimensional. And so what we do, I'm going to go in really close now, and I'm just going to show you this up close. So what we're going to do is we're now going to make, it sort of looks like an edge. That's the part of the roof that we see. And then we also make this hang over a little bit on top of the house. So we're going to extend that line a bit. And then we're going to draw in the chimney. And then, of course, the rest of it. But we're going to deal with the roof of the house first. And I'm going to go in again really close. And so, again, this line should extend a bit. And you want to make it 3-dimensional. And we also have the front part, a bit of the frame that you can see there. And you'll need to erase a little bit for the chimney. Which is sort of a rectangle. And so let me show you a little bit about the shape of the chimney. So it's kind of like this. Now, mine isn't showing the incredible top part, but you can do that very slightly at the top. I'm going to fix my roof line now that I put in the chimney. I'm going to make it a little bit longer there. There we go. So I just wanted to demonstrate there about what the angle that we are doing the chimney on. And it's okay if the top of yours shows a little more. Mine shows a little more in this one, not in my original, but I kind of like it. So I'm going to leave it. Meanwhile, I'm going to erase this so that we can now get to, well, first we'll do the details on our house here. So we have a rectangle for the door, and we have a little bit of some detail happening in the door. So again, I'm going to kind of show you the door. So you can see that there's a little bit of a suggestion of the frame on the outside of the door. Also, really just a line, a straight line going up and down because we are so far away. We just see sort of a hint of the doorknob. And then as far as the windows go, we have a top window that's above the door that is more of a rectangle. And then the ones that are on the side are a little bit more like square-ish. And here again, just some very tiny details because it's far away. Okay, so I'm going to draw mine in here. And later on we'll talk about when we get to the pen, we'll talk about, adding just slight shadows on the left side of some of the windows. Okay. You're welcome to actually add things to the roof of the house if you want. Like if you want to make it look a little bit more like a roof where, you could kind of do like shingle type situation here if you wanted to. You don't have to. Just a suggestion. Okay, so finally we're going to be adding on our lighthouse. Now, our lighthouse is a cylinder. And the way lighthouses are, so it is, because it's going upward, it's actually appears to be thinner at the top and sort of going in like this rather than straight. Two lines. These would be the two lines. So we're going to do that now. So sort of next to our house, it's really sort of in front of the house. We're going to start off at the bottom and starting off wide and going upward. So this is the bottom portion for the most part, this part of the lighthouse. And then, so if this kind of helps you, it's almost like you can see that they are not straight lines. Those lines are kind of curving, or I should say kind of like bowing. And I'm going to make mine a little bit thinner. Okay, so we're going to go up. And then we're going to make a separation here for the first section. And again, your line is going to be curved a bit like this. Basically, what I'm doing now is kind of breaking down the next section here, which will be the lighthouse railing. And again, curving. And I'm going to go in really close so that you can see the detail. So this railing, you can see that on the other side, even though the railing is going around, you would only sort of see that shape. Erase this so that you don't get confused with the lines. Okay, so there's our railing. We also have some little kind of, I think they're called joists that sort of support that railing. I'm gonna show you the pen version because I think it might be a little easier to see. So here was sort of that first curved line. I went upward and did this one. And then we have another one here with a window. And so I'm going to go upward. Here's that other curve for this one. And we have the window. In that section. And then we continue straight upward. And the rest of our cylinder here is now a little bit thinner. So this part is going to be where the other two details here, sort of like railings. Here's one. Here's another. And the same thing. So basically what I'm doing is it's a bit of a kind of like a circle, like a curve, or I should say a cylinder. And then on the other side, you can see that there's a little bit of a sort of railing type situation. And then we finally get to the glass part, the light of the lighthouse, which is this section here. And then the top, which is more rectangular, or I'm sorry, more triangular. So if you want to draw a triangle first and then you soften it, might also be kind of like mushroom shape. Right? And then you can make it fancy at the top. You know, you can add your own flair to it if you want to make it, you know, a little different than mine. And we have one more detail to add down here. Oh yeah, it does look like a Hershey kiss, Debbie. That's great. Oh my gosh, it does look like a Hershey kiss. I love Hershey kisses. Maybe I was, and I made this one up, so maybe it was subliminal. Always thinking about chocolate, so I would not be surprised. So we want to come down here to make two more details. We have a slight other detail here. You can see, so that's supposed to sort of be a detail, like almost like line work on there. But as you can see, I've skipped some space to make it look like, you know, the light is hitting it a little bit. And then right above is a window. So let's do that. So we have that down here. Again, your lines are curved, right? I'm making sort of a whisper of a line, and then the window above. And we are now going to add the clouds. And then we're going to go back and we're going to start adding in details for the sea and also the details for the rocks. So let's start off with our cloud work. So we're going to start over here on the left. Now you can add as many clouds as you like. You can also add some birds. Some seagulls. I don't know why I didn't do that. So my cloud work basically, because I'm using pen, I wanted it to look airy. And so I very lightly draw in a cloud. But again, you can see that there's space missing in between the lines. And that's to make it look more fluffy and more like a cloud, less solid. So I start off over here on the left. And I always start off at the bottom of a cloud. I'm going to make this darker so you can see it, right? And the clouds, I always sort of almost like I'm pulling I think of clouds as if I'm using a the cotton, like cotton swabs and like pulling it, right? Because that's kind of what clouds look like. Usually they have a bottom, like a base, and then they get kind of fluffy um alongside that base. So you can make as many of these as you want. I like to make one behind our lighthouse and kind of coming out on the other side. And then we have some here. Kind of have a big one here. You can even make your cloud shaped like something. That would be kind of fun. And then people look at your drawing and think, hey, is that a Mickey Mouse head? And so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go inside the cliffs and we're going to do a little bit of work inside there. We want to make sure to map everything out before we get to the pen, because the pen is not erasable. And that's not to scare you because you can make some lovely mistakes and cover them up with pen. That's a great thing about pen, I think. So I'm going to come back up to the top here, and I want to make it a little bit more sort of hilly on this section. That's just what I kind of want mine to be. We're going to do it also with on the other side of the lighthouse, but I want to make this just a little bit higher, like so. And then on the other side of the lighthouse, it kind of looks like it's sort of dropping off right now. So I'm going to add sort of some rock on the other side right here. And I'm going to kind of straighten this out a little bit. And I think I'm even going to increase this side a little bit as well. Okay. And then we want to now go inside. We're going to start off with this one. And basically, we're going to be making it look like, it's kind of crackling. And so it doesn't have to look exactly like mine, but I'm going to slow down so that you can kind of follow along. Because with this one, we definitely want to be making some shading lines. And they're going to kind of look like pockets of sections. So for instance, on this side, you're going to see that I'm creating line work for the most part. And then making sure that I definitely go down by the C area to do that as well. And already that looks more like a rock. And it also looks like, because of this shape here, it looks like it's facing this way. And so sometimes a line is very, you just need one line to make something look a little bit more realistic. And so now we're going to kind of leave this part, except let's add in this one part here. That also will make it look a little more realistic with this line here. And then I'm going to make this darker because this is the next sort of shape we're going to do. And we're going to make that darker once we add it, we add the pen anyway. So here is the next section that we're going to do. And we're going to skip right over here. And we're going to create this section here. So this is sort of a kind of a cutout of the rock. And so it's going to look a little bit weird. But it's going to look a bit like this. With that shape. Now, if yours doesn't look exactly like that, that's okay. But we're kind of making like a crevice inside the rock. And then from that, we're going to make lines at the top that are sort of looking like, it's going to be looking like it's, you know, breaking a little bit. And the use of our line work when we come back to this section is going to help it even more. And then again, I'm going to outline darkly the next section. Of rock. And so we are right here in this area. So as you can see, there's some shading on there. We're not going to worry about that right now. For right now, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go up the side of the rock formation and we're going to make almost like it's stonework, right? So it's going to kind of overlap on each other as it's going up. And this is where you want to make the shapes vary in size. It doesn't have to be, they don't all have to be small. They don't all have to be big. You kind of want to vary that shape or those shapes. So I'm making some smaller ones that are going along the edge out into the water. You've noticed I've kind of cut them, you know, I started here, but then I went over here. And it's kind of like scales, right, on a dinosaur. Or on anything, I guess, any animal that has scales. You're just going to make shapes that are sort of connected to each other. So just build on those shapes. And as you can see, you know, I'm making them sometimes jagged, right? Because basically it's rock. And then I kind of like to do the same thing, starting up at the top. And jagged rocks happening here. So fill in this section. Like so. think it's kind of relaxing to make the shapes of the rocks. You don't have to think too hard about it, and it's kind of relaxing, I think. Um, so up top here, we're just going to make some varied line work, just to indicate there's a little bit of some grass happening up here, right? So I'm just kind of making line work that's, almost like dotted lines, sort of. I'm going to go in closer. And that's going to bring us to our two final rock formations. So I'm going to add some more kind of divots in this one again. And this one too. Especially as I get out into the water here. I just wanted to sort of change the outside shape a little bit to make it a little more rocky. If you're happy with what you put originally, and you don't feel like doing that, that's okay. So these are our last two final rock formations. And basically we're going to be doing the same thing, but it gets a little bit less of some pencil work. So we start off, at the top on this one, just like we did on the one next to it. But we get a little bit lighter in our application of the rocks, right? So it's getting a little bit closer to the edge here. And then kind of drops off right here so that we still have line work, but it's not at all like, a honeycomb effect or anything like that. It's a little bit less. There's a little bit less detail. And later on, we'll go back in and we will also make shading. And same thing here with this last rock formation here. We have some line work, but it gets lighter as we go down toward the water. And then we finally have our water. So a little bit about water. So we're basically going to be making the waves. And I also think of it like there is a base to a wave or sort of a ripple. But it's also kind of literally, wavy lines. So what I started out doing was here, I don't do anything very solid lines, right? It's sort of, I don't know if the word it's wispy, but it's more looser. So starting off here, we're going to make this look like almost as if it's lapping up on a beach, even though there's no beach. At least not on, I don't know, maybe there is on this side. But so we're going to start off here so that we have a bit of a base to work from. And I'm going to go darker so that you're able to see it on Zoom. But we want these to be rather light. Okay. And then with that, let me move my camera out so you can see. We want the rest of the shape of the water to kind of go like this. So you don't have to draw that section. We're going to come back over here and the water would basically be sort of lapping up on the rocks. So what you can do is there might be certain sections where you want the actual water. So you can make it like a bump. is up on the rocks. And even there's a waviness to your lines. And so thinking about these like waves, right? Like there's a point and then, it kind of goes flat. And then there are some sections like this that I sort of made a shape as if the water is being kind of blown around. And, the water makes its own shape. But again, you can see none of these are solid shapes, right? Because water isn't solid. So I'm working, making less lines over here. But then as we start to go back, I start off right up against where the cliff is. And we'll go back here and make the line work darker with the pen. But for now, remember, there's sort of a little bit of a point, and then it goes flat, the water. So I'm kind of elongating this one as it goes out. But again, I want to kind of stop around sort of this area, kind of that shape. As far as my lines go. And everyone's will look a little different, which will be really neat. And then you want to take a look to see if, oops, sorry, I just hit my, I just hit the camera. You want to take a look to see if you want to add anything. So this is where, if you wanted to, you could add some seagulls. Let me get a little closer here. In the distance, which they would be sort of almost like W's, right? I might do that in this one. But if you're happy with what you have, we can now start to go in with our pen. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in with our pen. We're going to talk a little bit about, we're first going to make everything rather light, and then we're going to go back and make sections darker. And then when everything's dry, we're going to erase the pencil underneath. Okay, so these are our guides. So I'm going to now go very close to the artwork. We're going to start off with the cliff. And so in this section, we're actually going to go a bit dark. Now we're going to go out to the sea, but when we come over here, we want to make it look like the water is sort of, on top of, or kind of lapping up. And so I'm going to bring this out a little bit, and then I'm going to make some curves for the water. And that's going to also, we're going to start now on the next rock here. So we're doing the outlines. This is also where, if you want, you can sort of fix any spots that, you want to, maybe you wanted to do something a little different. I did that again with this rock. And then we're going to go inside these rocks And we're going to trace all of our line work, and this can be rather quick. We're going to do the same in this rock as well. Grab my other pen because I think my pen was sort of dying there. So what we're doing is we are still, tracing inside all of our lines. And we'll be adding more lines later on, but this is just kind of quickly tracing over what we just drew inside our rock formations, which is also going to take us again to the next section here. And whenever you start off, I like to start off in the water. And again, I kind of make it look like it's a little bumpy, and I extend a little bit of the water where the cliff comes in. Also start to make the top section where the house is. You can sort of trace around that. So basically what we're doing right now is the cliff, the outside lines, and then also the inside lines, the basics of it. Okay. So once you trace the rest of the cliff on the, outside, sort of the silhouette, you can then go back in and just trace around all of your line work that you created inside here. And this should also be sort of relaxing because you have everything pre-drawn. That's why I often say drawing and even art in general, I look at it as a map. You map out everything that you're going to do ahead of time, and then you start adding the rest of what you're going to do to it, whether that's paint, whether it's shading, line work, all that stuff. So once you do the basic shape or the basic redrawing of your cliff, you can do the same thing with the house. And here again, we'll go back into more detail and just be adding some darker areas later on once we have everything drawn out in pen. It'll just give it that extra oomph of realism by doing that. And so basically what we're doing at this point is we are retracing everything. Let's wait for the clouds so that because they are going to be a lot lighter than what you may be used to with the pen. So let's wait for that. And if you're not sure about a line, you can go very light at first, almost like, um, just going very light, very similar to what we're going to be doing with the clouds. Um, and we're going to do the same thing with the water as well. Well, I'll give everyone a little bit to catch up, and then we're going to dive into the clouds and the ripples in the water as well, because those are going to be light. Piece of paper so I can kind of demonstrate here. I'll give everyone another minute. Anybody wants to, erase some of your previous line work using the pencil on the ones that you already made, that you already added the pen to, you can do that if you like. I love using these erasers because they get everything a lot faster than the pink erasers, but the pink erasers work just as well. These are kneaded erasers, Kneaded. You can get them online, and you can order them from Amazon. I usually order a bunch. You can also I think you can find them at Hobby Lobby and definitely Michael's, any other art store, any art stores that are still around, that is. I miss the old school art stores. Okay. So I'm going to just do a demonstration of the line work and how light that we want to use. So, this would be a little bit darker. This is lighter, but basically what I do is I kind of go very light as far as I almost like move my, oh, all right, guys, I'm just going to mute you. So I'm going to kind of put my pen up above the paper. And so when I'm doing the clouds or when I'm doing the water at the bottom, maybe I might want to make it a little bit dark. And then I'm going to skip some space. So I'm going to do a cloud, right? And it gets really wispy. So I get even lighter. Same with the water. I pull out and then, again, I get lighter. And if I want, I can go back, kind of double in and make parts of it darker. But it might be good to kind of start off, light and wispy like that. And so we're going to do that for the water and also the clouds. And so we're going to start up here at the clouds. And so what I'm going to do is basically I follow the line that I've done, but I lift my hand up, very, very lightly. Like I'm sort of barely touching the paper, and then I'll go and I will touch the paper a little darker so that it's kind of almost like it's skipping ink. And then if I want to go back, as I mentioned, and make anything darker, I can do that. And for me, it helps to go fast so that my hand doesn't rest too long on sections. It's almost like I'm sketching with the marker. Technically am. Then I'm going to go in with the seagulls here and make them a little darker. A little bit. And then I'm going to do the same with the water, right? I'm kind of following the line work that I did, but I'm very lightly kind of skipping spaces. And you want to make sure everything dries before you go in with your eraser to now erase away all the pencil.
So, Nita, you're cleaning things up now?
Yep. Yep. So now I'm using an eraser to take off all the pencil. And we're approaching the final step after that, where we go back in and we make sections darker. I'm just gonna,
Is that feedback?
yeah, I'm just gonna mute you just because there's some feedback.
Sound,
Sounded like, sounded like an alien.
sounds like a Jefferson Airplane concert.
That's so funny. They were good. My husband Chris was listening to he came home earlier from work today. They've been letting them do that, I guess because of the traffic and stuff. And then he works like another hour when he gets home. Um, but he loves music, so he's always working to music. And he had first he started off with some jazz, and then went into it's always interesting to see what else he goes into. Um, and then he was listening to Hall and Oates, which I haven't heard in years. So that was pretty neat. And it was a live concert. So it was funny because there was feedback on one of the on one of the sections. Okay, so you want to make sure for the most part that you've got all the pencil up. I mean, you can always go back later on and take a look. It just makes it nice and clean. But now we're going to go in and make sections darker and add some, just lift up my table here. So as you can see, my drawing on the left looks more realistic, I would say. And that's because of the shading and emphasizing certain areas. And so we're going to start off first with the lighthouse. And we're going to start off, there would be some kind of shadow work right underneath the lighthouse here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in really close. Just move this one away. And that way you can see all the line work that we're going to do. So, Debbie, this really does look like a Hershey kiss and sort of a mushroom now that I'm looking at it. So there would be a shadow here right underneath. Oh, I grabbed the wrong pen, the pen that is dying on me. That's why that wasn't coming out. I was wondering, well, why doesn't it look like there's a shadow? There we go. So I'm going to do a little bit of shadow work here by going over the pen again and sort of making some shadow work here on the left side. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make lines, light lines on the left side there. I wanted to see if I should give you guys some more light or less light. Maybe a little more. And then to make it a little darker, I'm going to go over on the left and add more of the pen. And I'm going to do it on each section here on the left side. And already it's looking more realistic. And as we travel down, I also like to make a little bit of the curved sort of areas on the left side here of the light. And the other thing that I'm doing is where these kind of squares meet, I make it a little bit darker there too. And then I'm going to lightly draw in sort of like the light bulb here, very lightly. I just kind of do two squiggles to make it look like there's something in there. And then we're going to make it look dark on these cylinders underneath. Basically, the details as we're going down, we make them stand out a little more. So for instance, the fence here and underneath the fence for sure. We're going to outline those to make them look darker. And we're going to come up against the window here. And another curved area here that we're also going to make darker. And the important part is you see how it wraps around the building, right? So there's a little bit of a sort of two lines there. So it's almost like well, it's kind of like this. Do it on the back of here, right? You have your curve and then it's like that, right? And that's kind of like sits around, goes around Lighthouse. We're going to do that here as well in the next one. So we're kind of taking care of the parts that are a little bit darker first. And this one is rather dark that we sort of fill it in. And we're going to go down to our window. And we're going to make our window, the outline of it, dark. And then the line right underneath it, we're only going to make the two sections here a little bit dark. And then we're going to add some line work going up and down for some shading. Now I'm showing that really close so that you can see. And then we're going to add some subtle line work going down the left side of our lighthouse for shading. And so what we do is we start up, let's see, where did I start? Right over here. And you can see that I'm sort of very lightly kind of skipping the paper, but we're going down with lines so that it's shading. So the idea is that the way light goes, it's darker, you know, on one side, on the side that the sun isn't hitting it, or the light source, and then it gets lighter. But you can add these little very light spots to make it look like it's getting lighter, but there's still a little bit of shadow there. The other thing you can do is you can go back over then on the left side and you can make your line work a little bit darker if you want by going over it. so. But that's our lighthouse. And then we're going to move on to the house. And so the house, I like to make it a little bit darker here at the bottom. And then on the roof, right underneath where the roof is kind of hanging on the house, there would be a shadow. So where you see it a little bit darker on mine, you would do that. Our door, I also like to make, at least on the left side, a little bit of a shadow. And then with our windows, I usually pick like one side to go a little bit darker on, like one line. So I did that on the left here. And here I did it on the left on this window, but then on the right on the other two windows. So basically you can see that I've done, I almost do like an L shape as far as what I'm making darker. And we're now going to move to the cliff. And so we want the area of the cliff up here to be darker. So we're going to go over it again. And you can go loose with your pen. So what I'm doing is I'm almost like I'm outlining it, but then I'm also sort of, kind of shading with it. And that gives it sort of a rocky, like a rocky look. We're also going to go down the right side here of our cliff as well and make that darker. And so we're going to do sort of the darker areas first on the cliff in the rocks. Remember this part here. So the separations, we're going to go darker. So here's a separation here. Go dark there. We're going to go dark. We're going to skip and go over here now. The lighthouse, that is a window. This one here. Yep, that is a window. You're welcome. So we're going to come over here and we're going to make this section dark, this line. And we're going to go dark till about right here. And then we're going to go into the ocean with it on this side. Oops, sorry. I realized I have to lift up my camera here. And then the next section is this rock right here. And we're also going to come into the ocean with that too. And then we're going to do the ocean parts, the ocean side of the cliff work, which is pretty much most of them. Actually, all of them. So we're going to double up on the dark areas here. So everywhere where the cliffs sort of go into the ocean here, we're going to make darker. And now we're going to start some shading. So we're going to do some line work separating these two rocks. And here again, I'm going to show you the line work that I'm talking about. So we're going to come here and basically our line work, this is shading here, here. And basically you can see that the lines are going up and down and then they cross. So that's called cross hatching. Hatching is basically, you go in one direction and also, sort of like one pass, and then cross hatching. I literally cross over it, right? And it makes it darker, right? The shading darker. So when I go like this appears darker than that. And I can go over this multiple times in multiple directions to make it darker. So just by crossing over it again and again, this section is darker. So we're going to start off here and we're going to make our lines kind of going this way first. And we're just going to kind of stay at the bottom here. And then we're going to cross over them again. And so I want to make it a little bit darker in some sections. And so, it would be darker closer to the rock here. It would cast, there'd be a shadow in between these two rocks. So by making the line work, cross over, it makes it darker. And then I can even extend some of my line work upward. Anywhere that you see a shadow or that you want a shadow, you would use this line work here. And so I like to use it at the bottom of the rocks, making a single line first. And especially this back area here there would be a lot of shadow work. And so you could very lightly in each section, like each rock, you can make lines. You can make them going in either direction. And when you get to a section that is like an indent, right? Like there's a crack, you can make that a little darker, like right here. Make some line work back here. It also adds to the texture. And at the same time, you can go over sections with your pen to make it look a little darker, like the line work. Not all the lines, but some lines would be a little bit darker, sharper, because there's more of a shadow on them. And you can just sort of decide that. And that's how we're going to treat the rest of this rock formation. We make sections that have some more shading, especially we have this section here that is sort of an opening. And we want to add some line work to that. But basically, what you want to do to these rocks is just add some shading, um, especially on this side when it gets close to where each section is separated, each rock is separated. See, like I'm doing here. Then I sometimes go back and make part of the rock a little bit darker. And by not making it a perfect line, I'm introducing some texture work to the rocks even. And so that's going to leave you doing the same with the water, just going back in and making sections closer to where the cliffs are. You can make some darker lines. Like I'm coming in here, and the reason would be because it is, again, there'd be a shadow that would be cast with the rocks because the rocks are on top of the water and the sun doesn't always get to the parts. So there'd be a little bit of shadow in the water too. Closer to the rocks. And so you can see I'm just kind of going and making light line work, and it looks like shading. I'm gonna give everybody one more minute, and then I'd love to see what everyone's done. Ooh, Michael, my goodness. I'm gonna remove my spotlight and I'm gonna stop the recording so that we are able to share if you like.